Geometry students, this is a couple questions from homework 12. Sounds like there was a few tricky ones, so let's take a look at a few of them here. First of all, question 3. All right, it says the volume of a figure is 75 cubic inches. If the dimensions are tripled, what will the volume of the new figure be? All right, so when we're talking about volume, we have 3 dimensions of space. All right, so we have length, width, and height. So all you need to do is 3 times the length, 3 times the width, 3 times the height. Basically, that is 3 cubed, which is 27. So then all you do is take 75 times 27. All right, and that gives us our answer, which is 2,025 cubic inches. All right, so keep that in mind when you're talking about 3 dimensions. If you triple each, you have to triple each dimension. So think about volume in terms of tiny little cubes, basically. All right, and these tiny little cubes, if you triple them, there's 3 dimensions to them. There's length, width, and height, and you have to triple all of it. All right, so even if you have like a pi r squared times the height for the volume of a cylinder, for example, there's still 3 dimensions there. There's the radius squared, and there's the height. So you still have that 3 dimensions. So think of volume. The simplest way to think about it is think about volume as a tiny little cubes all added up. All right, so then for number 4, area. If we have an area of 24 square yards and the dimensions are multiplied by 7, we multiply by 7 twice. Because with area, we're looking at a 2-dimensional object, like a square. All right. So if we take a square, we multiply one side by 7 and the other side by 7, then we've multiplied the area by 49. All right. So that's what we need to do. We need to take the 24 and multiply it by the 49 to get the right answer, which is 1,176 square yards. Okay. Next question, 14. It says how many times smaller is the volume of a cylinder if the diameter is multiplied by 1/2. So I always write out the formula. The volume of a cylinder is area of the base times the height. The area of the base is a circle, so it's pi r squared times the height. All right. Now we want the diameter multiplied by 1/2. All right. Well, if the diameter is multiplied by 1/2, then the radius is also multiplied by 1/2. All right. Because the diameter is just 2 radius. So imagine, instead of having the diameter multiplied by 1/2, we're going to have the twice the radius multiplied by 1/2. So basically, that we can move that 1/2 to the r and multiply by the radius by 1/2. So we know we want the radius multiplied by 1/2. So let's go over here, and I'm going to call this the volume of the first object. The volume of the second object then is pi times, I need 1/2 r squared times the height. And the height staying the same, but the radius is multiplied by 1/2. All right, now I'm going to take that 1/2 out. To take it out, I need to square it. So 1/2 squared is 1/4. So I have 1/4 pi r squared times the height. Now this pi r squared right here, this quantity, is my volume of the first object. So it's 1/4 the volume of the first object. So now I've shown that the volume of the second one is 1/4 the volume of the first one. So we would say basically 4 times larger, because it's asking how many times smaller is the volume of the cylinder if the diameter is multiplied by 1/2. It's 4 times smaller. So 1/4 the original volume, or 4 times smaller. All right, then one more. Surface area of a sphere is 4 pi r squared. All right, and the question is how many times smaller is a sphere if the radius is multiplied by 1/4. So I'm going to multiply the radius. I'm going to call this the surface area of the first object, and the surface area of the second one then would be 4 pi, and I'm going to multiply the radius by 1/4, so 1/4 the radius. All right, now to get this simplified, I'm going to take this number and put it out front. So 1/4 squared is 1/16. So I have basically this now, if I square both the 1/4 and the r. And then I can move that 1/16 out front. So I'm going to move it underneath the 4, because order doesn't matter when you're multiplying. All right. And then 4 goes into 16 4 times, so it's 1/4 pi r squared, which that pi r squared times 4 anyway was our original surface area right here. So if you want to compare this quantity, I guess it would have been best to do it right here. So let me rewrite that as 4 over. Let me write 1/16 out front, so it just becomes really clear. And then 4 times pi r squared. So this is the same thing as this, which is the same thing as this, right? So basically, this is my original surface area, and it's 1/16. So I would say 16 times smaller. So it's nice to compare the original surface area to what you get when you simplify the new surface area. That's the way I like to do it. I know the book has been plugging in numbers. If you look at the solutions, well, I don't know that you guys can't see a lot of the solutions, but that's the way they recommended that I did it, and that's the way I taught. I taught it both ways in the video, but I'd recommend doing it this way. It's harder, but it makes you understand the math better in terms of the algebraic way to do it, which is the more powerful way, in my view. All right, so I hope this helps. I hope you guys have a wonderful day, and we'll talk soon.